don't judge one another. Are we ready for that? So you can advocate for one another as an attorney, but the judging off the table. Is that what the Bible says? We're never to judge one another? Well, let's look. Let's look. We got it. We got to look at the text. Let's let the text speak to us as we go through this together tonight. I know it'll be a blessing. I am looking forward to doing this with all of you when we do so, getting to Romans. What a beautiful young lady. I have judged rightly. So do not judge one another. This is an extremely, extremely valuable topic. I do feel like a judgmental spirit has caused so much trouble in churches. A judgmental Christian is one of the worst experiences someone can have in church. And I know many folks will never go back to church because of that experience. And a discerning, loving brother or sister is one of the greatest values in a church. So you have these two poles, and we need to try to work on getting the right emphasis in our church. So this would be helpful. As you see in the notes there, this is just a survey of all the one another's that we've gone through. And we have one more to go, but I felt like it'd be good to have them all in front of you. You have these main ones, and then all the other one another's there are kind of grouped under those main ones. I think there were 127 occurrences, but some of them were don't do this for one another, and some of them were do this for one another. So we have several of these one another's, and I appreciate everybody working hard to go through these together over the last couple months. This is our application of ecclesiology. The church is all of these groups coming together, meeting one another. So what are we to do for one another? Well, love one another, be unified with one another, encourage one another, care for one another, build up one another, forgive one another, and then don't judge one another. And then the next one will be don't complain about one another. I think Way is finishing us off in a couple weeks. That rascal. No, don't complain. He's not a rascal. Thank you, Way. Okay, so there's our one another's. Today is another nice one that we only see it there in Romans 14:13 in that one another formula, but it does come up often in the Bible, this concept. Okay, so let's move through some of these. The context is don't judge. The context is don't judge. So as you look at Romans 14:13, why don't we all read it there on the left column? Romans 14:13. Therefore, let us not judge one another anymore, but rather judge this, not to put a stumbling block or offense before a brother. Okay, so there's Romans 14. Now, if you have your Bible, it would be good to go to the context. So open up to Romans 14 and let's see what it's talking about. This really brings help in understanding it. Verses 1 to 4. Actually, when you feel like reading verses 1 to 4, Romans 14, 1 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
As for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand.
Okay. So it is here, verses 1 to 4, don't judge. And it's with reference to food, verses 1 to 4, this vegetable. Someone, their conscience says, I shouldn't eat any meat. I shouldn't eat any, ham, especially. I'm going to keep a kosher diet, but super kosher, only vegetables. This other person's like, hey, I'm going to have a quarter pounder with cheese. I'm going to enjoy that. So one person will judge that person that's over there eating that hamburger. What a filthy Gentile eating that hamburger. And if he's not careful, he'll look down on them for that reason. This person can cause them to stumble by saying, listen, you're missing out on meat. You have no idea what you're missing out on. And that person may offend their conscience, meaning because they push them to eat the meat so much, even though in their conscience they feel like they shouldn't, they're going to offend their conscience and they're going to stumble into sin. This also happens with holy days. Who would read 14 verses 5 and 6? Okay, Asher.
One person considers one day very so great than another. Another considers every day of life. Each of them should be fully convinced of whoever regards one day as special, does so to the Lord. Whoever eats does so to the Lord. They give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God.
Okay, so brings in the idea of days as well. Don't judge one who does not celebrate a holy day, and don't cause someone else to stumble who wants to celebrate that holy day because you don't think you have to anymore. Be fully convinced, is verses 7 and 12, 7 to 12. Be fully convinced in your own mind. Don't judge and don't cause others to stumble. God will be the judge. Right? So be fully convinced, God will judge. Who would read verses 7 to 12? Okay.
For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then whether we live or rather we die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and was again, that he might the Lord both dead and living. Why do you have sins on your brother, or why do you despise your brother? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God.
Okay.
What is written, as I live in the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God.
So then each one will give an account of himself to God. Therefore, that's our verse. Let us not judge one another anymore, but rather judge this. Don't put a stumbling block or offense before a brother. So that's the context. It's talking about these areas that people can agree to disagree on, perhaps, and it's an area of conscience. We need to be careful not to be judgmental, judging one another, or act in such a way that we cause someone to offend their conscience and make a stumbling block. So that's the two commands here. The command, don't judge one another. Now, judging can mean condemnation. The gavel down, condemned to hell. Right, here's all the different occurrences of this word family. This is always helpful to do. You can see all the different ways it's translated here. It's this word, judge, pass judgment on. So the most common translation is judge, but look, it's also just to make a decision. Like Paul decided to sail here. He judged that this was a good decision. It's a discerning decision to do. So you can actually have a discerning decision for someone else, and that can slip into you're wrong, I'm right, and if we're not careful, you're guilty. So you can see kind of the flavor and the color of this word in the different ways that it's translated. Don't judge one another. Judging can mean condemnation. Don't condemn one another. Of course, we can't condemn one another. God is the only one who will condemn to hell. God is the only one who has that authority. He has placed all judgment unto the Son. So we don't do this on an individual level, but what's interesting is you look at all the references, we do this on a corporate level. What is that Matthew 18 scenario? Does anyone remember? Kind of. It's the area of church discipline. If you find someone stumbling, you go to that person and you win your brother if they listen to you. If they don't listen to you, you take someone else and you encourage them. And if they don't listen to you, you bring it before the assembly. And if they don't listen to the assembly, what happens? You treat them as a Gentile. What does that mean? It means, yeah, well, it means that you're treating them. It means you're saying you are not a Christian. You are not in this assembly. You're actually, now you're not sending them to hell, but according to the church, we've seen this, and it started very small. The conduct was tried to correct it, tried to correct it, tried to correct it, more people, more people. And now the whole church is saying this person is not walking according to the law of Christ. So this is done in a corporate level, not an individual level. And the other case would be there in 1 Corinthians 5 and 6, where Paul is upset at them. Well, first of all, it's church discipline in chapter 5. He says, I judge this person with you already. Right? They're in immorality. You should have should have gone through this process with them. And then in chapter 6, he's saying, listen, don't you know that you are going to judge angels? You are taking brothers and sisters to court, but you should be able in your community, the community of the church, to help make discerning decisions in that sense of one another. So judging condemnation, no. But in one sense, the corporate church does this in a careful, slow, and steady way, not to condemn someone to hell, but to encourage them, say, hey, according to the congregation here, you're not walking as a Christian, and by your treating them like an unbeliever means sharing the gospel with them, encouraging them to come to Christ.
Like the believer who had his father's wife.
Yeah, so that's that 1 Corinthians 5 one there. They were in that immorality. And so that word judge there, Paul uses. I've judged already, as if I were among you. So is the church corporate. Now, that person should have been addressed in private first, should have been addressed by many, should have taken months. Yeah, he did. And he repented and they won their brother. So even that is for the purpose of reconciliation. Judging can also mean, let's see, making decisions of guilt for others, saying you're guilty in this way. There's discernment in such a way that I exercise that discernment and say, you are wrong. But I would say it's really hard to find cases where either of these are used in an individual level. Even where Jesus says in Matthew 7, John 7. So he says in Matthew 7, judge not, that you be not judged. We'll get to that in a second. And then people say, well, but he did say exercise righteous judgment. But in that case, he's talking to the Pharisees and he's saying, you are not saying the right thing about me. You're making a bad decision. And it's really that idea of poor decision making. So you should judge what is true about Jesus. Yes. Now, let's keep going with this. So the command is don't judge one another. The context is in this realm of eating. The other command there, as we finish it off, therefore let us not judge one another, but rather show your discernment in this way, not to put a stumbling block of offense before a brother. Therefore let us judge one another anymore, but rather judge this, not to put a stumbling block of offense before a brother. This is the other side of the coin. One is to judge saying, oh, Ben, I don't like you doing that. Right? I just think a Christian shouldn't do that. The other way would be Ben coming to me and saying, Tim, I think a Christian should do that. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. No, do it, Tim. Do it. Jump off the bridge. Jump off the bridge. And then finally I jump off the bridge because I was pushed. Now, I wasn't pushed, but that's the idea of stumbling. It's that you are doing something in such a way that causes that person to stumble. Now, let's say you all have a problem with me having a pool in my backyard. And you are convinced that that is wrong for a Christian to put a pool in their backyard.
Now if I can come soak my feet.
If I know that, does that mean I should never put a pool in my backyard? Let's say I know Xavier has a really hard time with that. He's like, Tim, you're a pastor. You shouldn't do anything that would cause people to take some of their clothes off and jump in water. Nobody's going to be wearing jeans in that pool. They're wearing shorts. I know it. Right. So you're causing them to stumble. They're looking at their ankles, and this is really getting into trouble. So should I not ever have a pool in my backyard? Because Xavier has a different opinion?
You can have rules. Wear a respectable clothing. for this pool.
Okay, but he's just against pools.
Well, no,
So does that mean I never can have a pool?
you can baptize people.
Right. I think I can have a pool. But I can't have a pool in such a way that I make Xavier offend his conscience.
Yeah.
Say, come on, man, pool party, my place. Everybody in the church is invited, right? Especially Xavier, right? That is wanting him and causing him to stumble. Okay. So the issue is not that I'm always being careful not to offend someone the way we use that word. It is to cause them to stumble, to cause them to offend their conscience by what I'm pushing. Okay. So that's the other part of this command. I'm not doing such in things in such a way that I'm not considerate of that person's views to where I push them the wrong way. And
So if Xavier were to say, well, you having a pool offends me, he's not really allowed to say that. I mean, he's allowed to say it, but that's not a valid
Argument.
argument.
Yeah.
Because you having a pool doesn't have any effect on whether he has a pool or interacts with a pool,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. But I will say this, let's say, well, my Sunday school teacher growing up was a drunk before he got saved. And so he would never go into Pizza Hut, or any place that sells alcohol. So I wouldn't have him over or go to Pizza Hut with him. But if I knew that me going into Pizza Hut would cause him to go in, I would never go into Pizza Hut.
Even without him there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't want his conscience to call him to stumble. I mean, if it offends him, no big deal. If I know his conscience is strong enough, that's not going to bother him at all because he's strong in his conviction. But if I know my going in there is going to make him go in there and offend his conscience, then I may be causing him to stumble. And Paul says, so don't eat meat the rest of your life. It doesn't really matter. What matters is my Sunday school teacher.
Going back to the pool analogy, if you know that if you get a pool, Xavier's
He's going to go in there.
either
He's
go
going
in
to offend
yours
his
With
conscience.
someone else's and he knows he shouldn't.
Then I need to hold off. Yeah. Yeah. We were going to do that for the baptism, but so much.
Xavier.
Did you say that just because you're a pastor, or?
I think, yeah, because of that. Yeah. But I think any Christian, we need to be careful in these areas, not to, if it's a doubtful area, let's be careful not to be so public about it. And if you feel like, man, that person just got saved and they're working through this, so I'm not going to tell them that I enjoy that, so that not that they'll be offended. Maybe I could talk about it and see where they are. If their conscience is strongly against it, and what I think they don't care, then I'll just keep doing it, but I don't need to do it in their face. Well, let's look at a few practical applications. Okay, so we'll just close with these applications. Okay. 5 practical principles to follow. Yeah, this kid is causing the dad to stumble. All right, that is the issue. Doing things in such a way that makes someone stumble. Okay, so 5 practical principles, and we'll need to wrap it up. 1, avoid hypercritical judgmentalism. Avoid hypercritical judgmentalism. Matthew 7, 1 through 5. And I think this is what we just really need to be careful about as Christians, that we don't work on the specks in people's eyes, is what Jesus says. Do not judge. Now, Jesus says that so you will not be judged. And I do believe that people who are judgmental and very quick to pick out everything in someone else, they are going to be judged with the same exact amount of strictness. The measure you measure will be measured back to you. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye? Don't notice the log, that huge beam that's in your eye. You hypocrite, take the log out of your eye and then help your brother with the speck. And so, of course, we're not supposed to condemn. We're not supposed to condemn. We don't do that individually. But we really need to be careful even about this aspect of, hey, be careful about this. You don't measure up. You don't measure up in this area. We need to recognize none of us measure up. None of us measure up. We have all fallen short of the glory of God. And the spirit is the next one, but it should not have this critical spirit of judgmentalism. I still remember this, and maybe this is because I'm bitter. I don't think I'm bitter. Sarah will remember this. During our premarital counseling, I remember the pastor going like this and saying, "All right, Tim, what is that?" And I said, "Oh, that's a spot." And he's like, "You're a perfectionist. You're judgmental. You didn't notice all this white." I'm like, "But you pointed to the speck." I mean, like, what was I supposed to do? Are you just setting me up? Like, I don't think I'm a perfectionist. I kind of wish I was a little more that way, but in his mind, I was a perfectionist. But it is true. Like, if we're not careful, and if you are a perfectionist, you will see the one thing wrong and acknowledge the one thing wrong rather than all that person is doing right. And so we need to be really careful to avoid hypercritical or even just critical, being critical, noticing everything that's wrong. Jesus's throne is always a throne of grace. And whenever we come to him, we all fall short, but he comes and he helps us. And so the second principle would be consider the principle of love. Is this discernment decision for their benefit or for mine? Love is the answer, right? Do everything you do out of love. If I'm motivated by love, then I will want to help them. I want to help them through this. Yes, I'm just wondering if I need to stop this here and finish up next time because I have 5 principles. I think we can do it in 5 minutes. Are you the opposing coach, the disgruntled fan, or the batting coach? The opposing coach is happy when somebody messes up. Hey, we're going to catch up. When you see someone mess up, are you happy? I am so happy I can point that out. Tim forgot to tie his shoes, and I'm going to let him have it. That's the opposing coach. Are you the disgruntled fan? Tim, what a numbskull. He's not tied his shoes right again. Erg. I mean, you see this I love when I go to a Mets game and they're like losing every game. It's so funny to hear how invested people are emotionally in this game. And they're like yelling and booing and chanting, sell the team, right? They're just so angry at that person who struck out. Or are you the batting coach? We need to be the batting coach. The batting coach comes up to that person and says, "Look, I think this is where your swing is a little wrong." Puts his arm around him and says, "Hey, behind the scenes, I'm going to help you succeed over the next 3 months." That's what I get paid to do. I don't get paid to boo you. I don't get paid to joy at your error. I get paid to help you succeed. This is the difference between Jeremiah and Jonah. Jonah was so happy with the condemnation of Nineveh. Jeremiah wept over the destruction of his people. The principle of knowledge. Do I have all the information? We just met an attorney that became a defense attorney because when he was a teenager, he was falsely accused. A police officer showed up to his door. I think he said he was 16 or something. He was 12 and arrested him in front of his family for something that he didn't do. It was a horrendous thing that brought slander upon him, and it wasn't cleared up for days, and they just had the wrong name. And that's horrible. Do you have the knowledge? He who gives an answer before he hears, it's a folly and shame to him. Then the principle of duty. Is this my responsibility? Is this something that I'm supposed to? Am I this person's hitting coach? Just be careful about that, right? Maybe none of your business. Now, if it's a brother or sister that you love, it's your business, but it's helping them. It's coming alongside them to help them out of love. It's not just getting joy out of picking on people over this or that or the other thing. You really want them to succeed. And then lastly, the principle of the gnat. Is this going to harm this person? I mean, do you really need to point this out? Jesus said the Pharisees strained at a gnat and swallowed a camel. All right, they're just getting that gnat out there. You're not want to swallow that, but then they're swallowing a camel. Right? The things that they ignored were huge, and the things they picked on were tiny. And so let us be careful what things we bring up, what things we do, and our spirit about it needs to be that of love, encouraging one another, helping one another. All right, I really wanted to spend time on this. Let me just read it, and we'll do it together. I'd rather break up in groups, but Jim Bob is having a difficult time with celebrating birthdays. He heard that in 200 BC, the Irish peoples offered sacrifice to Suzuki, the Irish deity of life days. They would give gifts on each person's birthday to remember Suzuki, and their chant of happy in ancient Gaelic actually means Suzuki. Happy means Suzuki in ancient Gaelic. He is convinced by some very reliable YouTube evidence that anyone who sings happy birthday is actually worshiping the ancient Gaelic deity Suzuki. He condemns the practice and believes everyone who sings happy birthday is not a Christian. How should you advise Jim Bob in this situation? All right, so let's give these what would you do? Number one, invite him to your birthday party and be sure to send him a happy birthday gram to his office. Number two, encourage him to celebrate his birthday. His ideas are hokey, and no one knew about Suzuki until he brought it up. Number three, share with him that his view is most likely wrong, and you will continue to celebrate birthdays, but understand that his conscience may be offended, so you won't hang out with him on your birthday. Maybe we can get together the next night. Disassociate with the divisive brother. Join his group and refuse to celebrate birthdays just in case he might be sensitive about the issue. How are we going to help out Jim Bob? 4. No. Disassociate with that divisive brother. No.
Wrong under all circumstances.
I think 4 may come in there eventually, depending on how much trouble they're making. But I think that's a different principle. I think that becomes a different principle of church discipline, where we will gather together around Jim Bob. And if he keeps making a mess about this, it's like, bud, no one knew about Suzuki till you started talking about it. Now people are worshiping Suzuki. I mean, come on. Okay.
It's this level of spiritual growth. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, some people have been Christians for a very long time come up with these things. Number 3. Yeah. I think you can share with him that his views is a little off and try not to offend his conscience. I think he needs to hear that. But you're just going to be gentle about it and say, hey, I'm not going to even leave you out of my birthday. We're just going to get together in a couple of days, and we're not going to send him birthday presents. But I don't think we need to not say happy birthday at church. I think we could still say happy birthday at church, but be careful about his views. Any thoughts on Jim Bob?
Like sharing that their view is most likely wrong. You can try to do it in a nice, kind of way.
So the offense, remember, offending does not mean they're disgruntled. Their offending means Jim Bob's, man, I don't want to do it. I think God is not pleased with this, but I'm gonna have birthdays. I'm gonna sing happy birthday because the church does it every last Sunday of the month. So I'm gonna sing. That would cause him to offend, and actually he would be sinning to offend his conscience and sing happy birthday. But if it's just
difference of
a difference of opinion and he's like a little miffed that you still have birthdays and you're not following him in his conspiracy, that's not what it's talking about. He can be miffed all he wants because he's wrong. And a lot of people are miffed about dumb things. And so we stand for what is true, even if it makes someone miffed, and we're just patient with them that it's not the way we teach it. I'm not doing it well, quite as well as I should right now, probably, but that we teach it in such a way that is gracious, and they would only say, you know what, they have I understand where they are, and they're well-meaning. And I think there's folks that disagree with us on some holidays, and there are people that don't celebrate birthdays. Now it doesn't go back to Gaelic, but they think it's wrong. So I tried not to use too many illustrations that we can tie to people, but offended does not mean what it means in English. Offended means cause them to stumble in the Greek. There's other things that we need to do that would principles that say, I'm not going to do things that irritate people, right? I'm going to be kind. Love is kind. And so that would be where I'm careful with Jim Bob. And I'm not going to, again, try to pick on him for that. And treat him condescendingly. That I feel like I'm being condescending to Jim Bob right now, but it's a made up situation. I need to make sure I'm kind to him and not condescending. But I might want to slam his YouTube channel and just say, look, this is full of trash. And I can be condescending to that YouTube channel and help him with it, maybe. Does that make sense? But his being offended is not part of being offended. His offended is a separate issue from his stumbling, causing offense to where he's stumbling into sin. All right, any other thoughts, questions,
I was just thinking.
clarifications?
About, like, how we as Christians should think about things. So like, let's say I'm Jim Bob. Right? What, not just about the birthday issue, but what is biblical advice for that person? And this person James came to mind, says, but the wisdom love is pure, then peaceful, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, and sincere.
Amen. Yeah, it's a great principle. Yeah. Jim Bob, as you shared, is this bringing peace or division? Yeah, wisdom from above is peaceable, easy to be treated. Very good. And I mentioned this on purpose. Jim Bob is condemning people, and that is what he is not supposed to do according to that text. We are not to get him to offend his conscience, and he should not be condemning those who are saying happy birthday. So he has a responsibility not to condemn us. I think that's maybe what we could put in number 3. Please don't condemn me for this, because I have a different opinion. So we could change that.
can be Jim Bob.
Yes,
So-
I'm Jim Bob very often.
But I'm just, but, so just having, as we walk, we have to have wisdom from above, we have to think of others better than ourselves. Just, devouring the word every day, and then some things will and then we're always like struck with, other people's ideas all the time, and you're like, wait, I know that was bad. Yeah, so it's probably a constant thing.
Amen.
Meat that was offered to idols. And if somebody was offended, because you were eating meat that was offered to idols at the butcher shop, and it was the best cut of meat and everything, but we're free to eat that.
Mm-hmm.
This would say again, his spiritual growth, and he's a baby, apparently in Christ. I would not offend him. I would leave the meat there. make sure he was home and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it. And that may have been the case where he had a pagan background. This person with a Jewish background has no temptation to go to that temple. It's repulsive to him.
Yeah.
But the man from the pagan background is like, no, I remember the sexual lust that was there, the things that went along with that. And I cannot do that in my conscience. I'm so sorry, brother. Yeah, let's go eat pork ribs around the corner.
Exactly.
And then the Jewish guy's like, pork ribs? Who are you eating pork ribs?
But how free he was to like, with his disciples, go ahead and eat from the grain on Sabbath, and he
Right.
was like totally offensive to so many people.
Pharisees
Yeah, they're like, what? We can't be doing that, and he's Jesus.
on the Sabbath day. Yeah.
Yeah,
The Lord of the Sabbath.
so he wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers.
Yes. Especially the traditional commands of men. And that's what some of this becomes, our traditional commands. Like I can't go there. Yeah. Things are cultural. There's some things that are cultural and change. Like hairstyles, dress styles. These things change. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take some praises. Yeah.
We're talking about offending other people by, what you do or don't do. I had a friend, that was Jewish. And she's since passed away, but she was Jewish and her husband was Jewish, and naturally his mother was Jewish. So normally she would eat a cheeseburger, but you're not supposed to mix, milk, dairy with meat. But not to offend her mother-in-law, she would not get a cheeseburger in front of her.
Okay.
Because she knew that the mother-in-law would probably have a fit.
Yes.
I mean, it's nothing to her. She would even eat a bacon cheeseburger,
Sorry.
because she
Yeah.
wasn't kosher.
Okay.
She never was. But in front of her mother-in-law, she would remember not to get a cheeseburger.
And these
So-
were the scenarios that were so common in the early church because everybody was Jewish, and then 30 years later, everybody's Gentile coming into the same assembly. And so you had so many of these things, but it's so practical because we have this in every culture, especially Queens, where we have so many different people groups, cultures that are coming together, right? And maybe we'll just maybe say a little bit about this next time. But when we get to Romans 14, we'll walk very carefully through all these verses, and it'll be very practical for us.